So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our special council meeting on June 24th, 2026. The purpose of this meeting is to provide information related to a better tent city. I'll now call on Tim Brubaker, Regional Clerk, to conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Craig.
Present.
Councillor Erb. We have regrets from Councillor Foxton, Councillor Gowing.
Present.
Councillor Harris. Councillor Hunick.
Go Team Canada.
Councillor James.
Present.
Councillor Liggett. Councillor McCabe. Oh, Councillor Harris is online. Councillor McCabe.
Yeah.
Councillor Nowak.
Yes.
Councillor Rodriguez.
Present.
Councillor Salonen.
Present.
Councillor Shantz.
Present.
And we have regrets from Councillor Verbanovich. Councillor Wolf.
Present.
Thank you, Chair.
I want to acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabeg, and the Chinootan or Neutral peoples. In doing this, I want to reflect on what it means to be doing important community work like we're engaging in collectively today, and also on my own personal relationship to this land. As a settler, one of the most important aspects of my individual journey towards truth and reconciliation has been to listen. I am continually grateful to a community that shares their stories and their concerns with me. As well as chair of the region, I know I carry a large responsibility to ensure that it is not just myself on an individual level listening and acting, but that as a government we are listening and creating action with community. I'm offering this acknowledgement as one of the many actions I am personally, and the region largely, is taking toward truth and reconciliation. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements, their contributions in our community. There are a few days of significance I would like to recognize. June 23rd is the National Day of Remembrance for Victims of Terrorism, which was first observed in 2005 in memory of those who had lost their lives during acts of terror in Canada and around the world. June 25th is Airport Workers' Day. Airports are complex, dynamic environments, and collaboration among departments and with airport partners ensures smooth travel for all. YKF is home to 44 businesses and various aviation-related businesses. A happy Airport Workers' Day to the 35-plus Canadian airports celebrating. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none, we will move to delegations. We will hear the delegations as listed on the agenda, but I want to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. If you are attending in person, please proceed to the podium when you are called upon to speak. I will note now that we have a new accessible podium that has the ability to be lowered and raised using the buttons on the right. If you're attending virtually, please turn your microphone and camera on when called upon. You will have 5 minutes to speak if you are registered before the deadline and 3 minutes if you registered afterwards. When the light on the podium turns yellow, excuse me, that means you have 1 minute remaining. When the light turns red, that means your time is up. You may hear me give you a reminder about the remaining time. Additionally, some general reminders. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in immediate removal from the meeting. Interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations. Derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others. Turning on your camera at inappropriate times, hate speech, or defamatory comments. Those who do not abide by these rules will receive one warning before being asked to leave the room. One last reminder for delegations. Please do not take offense if during your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from community members. And a quick reminder to members of the audience. You are asked to maintain order, and this means you may not address council without the permission of the chair, interrupt anyone, disrupt the meeting with unreasonable noise or vocal expression, such as applause, booing, or cheering, or displaying signs or posters. So our first delegate today, and you can access the podium by the middle aisleway, is Jeff Wilmer, Board Chair of Better Tent City. Welcome to the podium, Jeff, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. A Better Tent City started a little over 6 years ago as a tiny homes community providing a safe place to be for people who either couldn't or wouldn't use the shelter system. And we've kept it going for 6 years. But a few months ago, we, the board of directors, came to the realization that it was no longer sustainable as a largely volunteer-led operation. So at that point, we approached regional staff because our hope was that even though we didn't feel we could keep it going, it was an important initiative. It's valuable work and it's helpful to many people in the community. And our hope was that a way could be found to keep it going. So we're pleased to see the report that's before you this morning. Regional staff have made their recommendations and we support those recommendations. When we reached out to staff 3 or 4 months ago, there were a lot of moving pieces here that we weren't too confident of them. Would the school board still be willing to host this on their property? Would the City of Kitchener still be willing to make its property available? Could an operator be found to manage the community? All of those things now seem to be coming together well, and we're very appreciative of all the hard work that's been going on to make that happen. And I shouldn't say particularly because it's all important, but I was going to say particularly the school board and the city, because our work across Canada to try to help other communities start a tiny homes initiative like this repeatedly runs up against the challenge of finding property, finding a piece of property that will work. And so the school board and the city have stepped up to make this land available and to agree to continue to make it available. So the fact that it's already there, already running, and already helping in this community, I think is important. So again, thank you to regional staff for your report. I just did want to clarify one thing, is that we, A Better Tent City, reached out to the region, and the region in turn reached out to the working center. And the only reason that that's key is because Joe Mancini, a member of the board of A Better Tent City, is obviously a big part of the working center. So as soon as the working center was invited into this discussion, at that point, Joe resigned as a member of our board. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear to people. So with that, happy to answer any questions and encourage Regional Council to adopt the report that's before you.
Jeff, thanks very much for clarifying that. I think that is important as we navigate these uncharted waters together. So we do have some questions. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks, Jeff, for coming in and providing that clarification and your volunteer service. Just a couple of questions. Throughout the history of A Better Tent City, had you applied for grants from the province or the federal government, and what to support the work, and what was the result of that?
We applied for a lot of grants over the years. I don't recall any of them being federal. Provincial, there's the Ontario Trillium Fund, which did fund some of our belonging and inclusion programs on the site. But in terms of regular operating funding, no, I don't recall us ever applying to the feds or the province. Okay.
I'm kind of surprised by that. But and can you also just provide the gender breakdown at Better Tent City? Do you have that? Like approximately?
Approximately, I would say it's close to 50-50. There may be a slightly more males than females, but it's close to 50-50.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you for coming in today. Just wondering if you have any words of wisdom for us as we potentially embark on this change. I mean, I know the working center is going to take over operations, but some of the rules might change, and that could be disruptive for the folks. And so what words of wisdom do you have in a transition?
So it's a rare opportunity to be asked that. That hardly ever happens to me. We've had a number of conversations with the residents as a group over the last couple of months because, yes, this is a challenging transition. Things are going to be a little bit different. Certainly, we reminded them that the fact that the plan is that this will continue as a tiny homes community, that none of them is being asked to leave, and that they'll still have their place, and they'll still have each other as a community. So all of those are positives. But the residents are concerned about a number of things. I think one thing that has been very important to them over the years is the ability to have visitors, partly because they see this as their home, and in their home they should be able to have a guest, but also because they've been transitioning recently from living rough, and they want to help somebody else who needs help. So I think that's one element of it. Certainly the working center, their messaging to the residents, because Stephanie, Joe, and Rebecca have been involved in these discussions as well, and Stephanie's made it clear that the plan going forward is visitors will no longer be allowed, and that accommodations or plans are being provided elsewhere, so that there is some other form of 24/7 drop-in elsewhere, so you can't just close the doors and not provide another opportunity. In terms of other words of wisdom, it's a complex community. There are 55 residents there. There are 20 or 30 sort of long-term visitors and dozens of other short-term drop-in visitors. That's a lot of people with different challenges in their lives. And we as a board and a leadership team over the years have struggled with the complexity and the nuance of managing things. It's been challenging, to be honest, as a leadership group to work through the challenges of, are we just a home for the 55 people, or are we that plus a drop-in? And we've tried a lot of different ways to manage visitors on site, none of them entirely successful. But that's also been challenging for our staff, because the staff and the volunteers interact with people who show up at the door just wanting to use the toilet, or wanting to get a meal, or wanting a place where they can sit down or lie down on the floor and sleep. And the staff are compassionate people. They don't have the heart to turn people away. Even if we as a board had said we're trying to limit visitors, it's easier to say that in principle than it is to be the one at the door saying, no, you can't come in, even though we have got a warm, welcoming space and chairs and food and toilets and the things that people need. So those kind of nuance have been super challenging for us to manage as a group. And even the residents themselves have different perspectives on it. Some of them feel threatened by visitors. Others want to welcome visitors. And so there's always different perspectives on all these complex issues.
Councillor Shantz? That was a great question. And that was a lot of wisdom, Jeff. Thank you. Councillor Hunick.
Jeff, I just want to provide my thanks on behalf of myself and on behalf of the community. I know you've put your heart and soul into a better tent city for 6 years or more, and it's good to know that you endorse the proposal before us. So thanks for coming today.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Chair. Just in case, Jeff, you're not going to hang around for the duration of the meeting, which may be a little longer than your schedule permits, I want to say thanks to you and your volunteers. This has been a journey with many challenges, and you've been very faithful at sticking in it. And so thank you for that. I know we met from time to time to talk about some of the things, and the intent was always well-founded, and so thank you for the work that you have done to keep this going.
Thank you very much.
I see no further questions, so thank you very much for coming in to delegate and sharing your wisdom, Jeff. Next delegate is Acer Bonaparte. Acer, you have 5 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Hey, Council. Long time no see. Normally I write my delegation in my very me style because I genuinely don't believe you're listening, but I'm sure we're getting hard to ignore. But today I'm just going to talk to you genuinely. Why do we keep doing the same thing? Why do we keep making the same mistakes? Why do we keep the Sisyphean hell that we're in? The Working Center has failed at running managed encampments. They failed at 1001 Herbs. It's a concentration camp. But they do have the experience running supervised encampments, right? They do, technically. It's not good experience, but they do. Other organizations could step in. They've offered to step in. I know they've offered to step in, and I know you know how awful 1001 Herbs is. I know you know. And it's not just that the Working Center is going to run it, that's the problem. They're kicking Nadine out, or they're offering her housing somewhere else that she doesn't quite want, but staff can no longer be residents. And my understanding of a Better Tent City was it was at least in part to create a continuous community where people feel stewardship over where they live. And it's had its problems. Every encampment has its problems, but to the residents I've talked to, they've liked it. It doesn't have the reputation of 1001 Herbs. You're banning visitors, or they're banning visitors. You're letting them ban visitors. Do you know how important a community is for homeless people? Do you know that it's been proven in studies, even studies done locally on a Better Tent City, but studies done further away, that allowing visitors, that allowing intimate relationships, that allowing community improves homelessness outcomes. It just does. And yet, this flies in the face of that. So I guess what I'm saying here is, if you're listening, try and give it to another org. Open up the possibility of another org stepping in. I don't want to see another 1001 Herbs.
I see no questions. Thanks, Acer. Councillor McCabe.
Right, I thought I had made a request to speak. Thank you. I just, I don't know if I should have called a point of order. I'm not sure how you officially do that when someone, I would just ask people to please monitor their language. I found the reference to concentration camps extremely disturbing. That is not what is happening
Acer, you have
there.
been excused. You may sit down.
sorry.
Yeah.
Acer,
That might be
you
a
may
question
sit
for me.
down. This is a
Not question
comment
for you.
from a councillor.
It is not a question for you. It's a comment to, I guess, the chair, that my husband's family members endured and suffered through concentration camps, as did millions of other people. And so,
I would ask the
just-
gallery to
this
please
is-
be quiet. A councillor has the floor.
This is not appropriate language to use in any way, shape, or form as part of this discussion or any discussion.
I do not disagree. We'll move on to the next delegation. Theo Zhu, here in person. Theo withdrew. Nadine Green in person. Nadine, are you in the gallery? She's running late, but she's coming. Okay. Diana Myers. Julian Ickham. Julian, you have 5 minutes.
I'd like to start by addressing the comment of McCabe. My family has been through the Holocaust. I had a grandfather and an uncle who have been in lagers, and I think that parallels can be drawn. And there was a study done by the SDC that called 100 and Herb an open-air prison because people's rights have been taken away.
Julian, I want you to show some restraint in your conversation. So if you want to talk about a Better Tent
Fascism is
City,
fascism, and it needs to be called out. George Dimitrov, who was the leader of the anti-fascist resistance in Bulgaria, made 14 points of what fascism is. And I think that these points can be addressed in how the homeless community is being treated. Anyways, that's not what I came to speak about. What I came to speak about was my experience with Nadine and what the changes mean to the people at a Better Tent City. So I was homeless. It was the middle of winter. I have degenerative disc disease, and at that point in time, I had a serious infection in my leg, which eventually turned into sepsis. It was the middle of winter. I had nowhere to go. I was sleeping outside in -20, -30 degrees. And then I heard from someone that Nadine, who I met a long time ago when I was a kid, was allowing homeless people to stay at her store. I went to Nadine's store and I met a community that was working and taking care of the store. The city and the region did not like this, so they tried to shut it down. Many a night we stood up to 3, 4 in the morning writing legal arguments, going to court, while at the same time feeding and organizing a community. A culture came out of that, and with the help of Ron Doyle, a Better Tent City was set up. At that point, I went in a coma, and so I missed about a year of this. A Better Tent City is the place where people go when they have nowhere else to go. You guys closed down, well, are appealing the encampments and saying that, you know, people shouldn't live in tents. The changes that are being made to a Better Tent City shows that it's not just the issue of people living in a tent, it's an attack on homeless people. The SDC did a study at 101 Herbs where we talked to residents, and things such as sexual assault were reported, theft of people's drugs, people walking into people's cabins without giving them any right to privacy, people being evicted because of having pets, which are very important to homeless people. Now, some of the changes that are being made include no visitors, no use of kitchen, cabin checks, no staff can live there, which is actually an attack on Nadine, and that you have to be on OWODSP. This is clearly an attack on people's rights and dignities. Not allowing
43
people's
seconds, Julie.
partners. Sorry?
You the last several seconds. I'm just drawing
Yeah,
your
okay.
attention to the time.
Yeah. Like, basically, people's rights are being degraded. What you're basically saying is that homeless people living at a Better Tent City should not have the same rights as regular people. How would you like it if I came into your house to check whenever I felt like it? How would you like it if I told you that you have no use of your own kitchen? How would you like it if I intervened in your life and degraded your dignity? Nadine has built a Better Tent City. The attack on Nadine is an attack on a Better Tent City. Thank you very much.
Julian, I have no questions. Megan Snyder, are you here in person? Megan, you have the floor and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm delegating as an individual. Anyone connected to the housing and homelessness nonprofit sector right now knows or can glean or has gleaned that the process surrounding a Better Tent City's dissolution and handover to the region and then the working center has been extremely underhanded, deceptive, and anti-democratic. It's been about control, power, and ownership rather than protection of a space that was built by the community it serves. It all goes against everything ABTC founders Ron Doyle and Nadine Green stood and stand for. But decisions have once again been made behind closed doors without input from the people they impact, and now we're here. So I want to talk about what must be protected at ABTC and the ways it cannot become another 1001 Herbs Road. ABTC is more than a group of tiny homes. It is a community and a culture of dignity and agency for the unhoused, where unhoused people live with rights just like housed people like myself do, just like you and I, and unlike residents at Urbs Road, based on their own accounts. Tenants at ABTC don't wake up in the middle of the night to staff randomly checking their cabins. Just like us, they can access a kitchen at will. Just like us, they can share a home with their partners. Just like us, they have been able to welcome visitors. In fact, ABTC serves far more people than its tenants. Approximately 1,000 non-residents a year access ABTC for food, community, and life-stabilizing services. These visitors include folks from Urbs Road who come seeking nourishment, service access, or support not provided there. If ABTC under the Working Center does not allow visitors, this will leave an enormous gap in support for people who come seeking access to showers, laundry, good food, referrals to other supports and services like Sanguine and Safer Supply programs, support obtaining services necessary, IDs necessary for government services, and veterinary care for pets. Finally, I want to talk about Nadine Green. Nadine has been described over the years in our local media as the patron saint of Kitchener's homeless community, as a maverick, and as a champion of the underdog. She has been celebrated by many of you out in the community. She is known and beloved for sheltering the region's unhoused population in her store over COVID, leading to the establishment of a Better Tent City. Thank you, Nadine. And now she is no longer She is no longer welcome at a table she built. Nadine has been treated terribly. Not only has she been kept completely in the dark during this whole process, but she has been told that she is out of a job and a home as of July 20th. What can it possibly mean for the residents at ABTC and their dignity and agency when their consummate champion, protector, and peer is treated this way? A terrible start that is indicative of the future legacy of 1001 Urbs Road, Take 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. I have no questions. Lake Treffler. Lake, are you here in person? You have the floor and you have 5 minutes.
Hello, Council. Sorry, I wanted to talk about the situation with a Better Tent City, but I believe that others have said and will say everything that needs to be said on that topic anyway. However, there's perhaps one thing that I can offer some insight into, specifically the comments from Councillor McCabe. I am also proudly Jewish. My family, I apologize.
Lake, would a glass of water help?
Yes, please. I apologize. I'm not very good at speaking publicly, but I believe it's important to address this. Thank you. The Nazis put us in concentration camps because they believed we were dangerous. They thought that we were incompatible with the society that they wanted to build, and we had no place within it. And so they built camps outside the cities to concentrate whoever they thought was undesirable. Specifically in the extermination camps, they were murdered, but in most concentration camps, they were merely worked to death or allowed to die through harsh conditions. They were forced to wear a black triangle for homeless people specifically. Jews wore a yellow triangle, as I'm sure Councillor McCabe knows. And there were various other means of identifying and separating out undesirable classes of society. I understand the emotional reaction to hearing a mention of concentration camps and the Holocaust. But I believe that if these things are being brought up by the people living at 1001 Herbs Road, it is our responsibility as the surviving generation to listen to them and take what they say very seriously. The lesson that the survivors of the Holocaust have asked us to remember, I'm sorry, they have asked us to remember the Holocaust and to say, never again. If we want to honor their memory, I believe that we need to, all of us, all of the vulnerable, all of the vulnerable communities in Waterloo region, the Jewish community, the unhoused community, the queer community, all of us need to remember the lessons of the Holocaust and not stop listening when we hear things we don't like to hear, but always be vigilant, because fascism is not dead, and it will return if we ever allow it to. I apologize for my comments being unprepared and perhaps difficult to hear, but I think these things are very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Lake. I have no questions. The next delegation is Lily Fazard. Lily, you're in.
Jewish person talks about their experience in the Holocaust, that's one thing. But when gypsies talk about...
Julian, you have had your 5 minutes. I'm going to ask you to please stop talking.
You told me, you who brought Overlander here, told me not to talk
So,
about
Julian, you've been warned. We're going to have to ask you to leave if you continue to disrupt the meeting.
just pointing out...
Julian?
Only the chair can interrupt, not members of the community.
And Ren, you as well. You have to stop speaking out. You're doing a disservice to the people who are at the podium trying to express their opinions. And the jazz hands in the background distract from what the people are saying. So Lily,
Jazz hands, point of clarification, we're not allowed to talk about...
Ren, you're going to have to leave. I'm not having a conversation with you.
A security guard?
Lily, you're up and you have 5 minutes.
Good morning, Council. Good morning, Chair. This region is quite familiar with closing the doors and not providing any other options. Is this region not in the middle of appealing again?
Lily, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll come back to you. The interruption, we'll start the time and you have 5 minutes.
This region is quite familiar with closing the doors and not providing any other options. Is this region not in the middle of appealing again, a decision preventing them from doing just that with 100 Victoria? The report on a Better Tent City talks about the benefit of adding more shelter space to the system. This region is taking credit for work done by others, community and safety built by others to pad their stats. It's disgraceful. Those beds will only matter for the region's goals if they're empty. So how are you planning on achieving that? You justify the intensification of services and changing of conditions by promising remedies that as of yet don't exist. How is the community supposed to trust you? I guess self-determination doesn't matter if you're marginalized enough. If you reject labels such as fascism, maybe you're right. Maybe our government is just inherently evil. You don't care about any of us unless we're productive workers, good citizens, however you want to term it. Our status of humanity is subject to your definition, to your whims. I would have had more to say, but, how many days' notice did we get on this? 2? Something like that? Suffice it to say, this council continues to make grievous mistakes in this area. This council continues to commit human rights violations. This council continues to show its disdain for the homeless population in this community. They are us, we are them. How you treat them is how you treat the rest of us, whether you like it or not.
Thank you, Lily. I have no questions. Thank you for coming to delegate. Next delegate is Shannon Montgomery. Shannon. No Shannon, okay. Lynn Intini. Lynn, you registered after the deadline, so you have 3 minutes, and the podium is yours.
So the media narrative is already suggesting that somehow this is going to add shelter beds when what it's going to add is regionally owned shelter beds. A report from Dr. Pinn et al. Says the ability of ABTC to create a space that claims comfort and belonging reflects not only the material function as a shelter, but its political role as a site of resistance to dominant sheltering paradigms. It demonstrates the legitimacy of home is not conferred by formal tenure or program compliance, but by the capacity to dwell with autonomy, reciprocity, and recognition, conditions that are rarely found within institutional systems of homeless management. Yet, the Mancinis are indicating we've always been supportive of what a Better Tent City has created, and this will continue that. The idea is to create a similar model as Herbs Road because we've been able to show that model really works. I'm seeing a fundamental mismatch here. Works for who? Herbs Road is an institutional system of homeless management, and ABTC is not that. At ABTC, as it existed prior to the board dissolving, adding more security guards, making it harder to access the kitchen, all things I have discussed with my neighbors because this is my neighborhood. Previously, individuals were able to exercise autonomy over their daily lives, make meaningful choices about their lives, come and go freely from their living space, resident control over their living space, over the presence of other people such as romantic partners, friends, and service providers in their living space, and resident agency over participation in social and health services. Having relationships and choosing who's in your life is extremely important. If there is an overabundance of visitors, which one of the board members previously referred to as being overrun, which is a very dehumanizing choice of language for someone who claims to care so much about people. If there's an overabundance of visitors, this indicates a depth of need, that there are limited places for people where people are permitted to use a washroom, permitted to sit, spend time, visit their friends, permitted access to food when they are hungry on their time schedule, not just when someone chooses to feed them. That's what a Better Tent City is about. It's not about being an institution. And the Working Center runs institutions. So I would urge that as staff are looking at all of the better ways to make this work, they consider what it was built on.
Thank you, Lynn, for coming in. I have no questions. I'm going to go back. Shannon, are you now in the chamber? Okay, so Shannon, you have 3 minutes, and the podium is yours.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm here standing with the residents and the supporters of a Better Tent City. It's not just a place, this is a community, this is the people's homes. People are here to find safety, dignity, support, and belonging. A Better Tent City is not just a program or a project. It works because of trust, relationships, compassion, and support. The success comes from the people who built this community. We strongly request that Nadine remains at a Better Tent City. Nadine is a part of the heart and soul of this community. She has listened to residents, she has supported the people through the hardest times, built the trust, and created the sense of safety. You cannot replace years of relationship and trust by bringing in someone new. Nadine knows this community, she knows the people, she knows what works. We want to be clear. Why do we need new staff? We already have the staff and volunteers who already know us, who already know how it works. We love them, we trust them. The residents just want to know they have been here through the good times and the bad times. Many of the current staff and volunteers have applied to work with the Working Center, but they are not being considered to continue working with a Better Tent City. Our question is, why replace the people who already understand this community? Why change something that is already working? Our tiny homes do not need changed or remodeling. These are not just buildings, these are our homes. They represent safety, independence, hope, and belonging. The success of a Better Tent City is not the buildings, it is the community inside them. I submitted a letter to the Working Center with important questions and concerns. I've asked for answers in writing because the residents deserve transparency, communication, and accountability. My request for answers was refused. Residents should not have to fight to get answers for their own homes and community. We are asking to keep Nadine, the staff, and the volunteers who've earned our trust. We keep our homes the way that they are, to keep the community model that works. Listen to the people who live here every day. A Better Tent City is more than a place where people sleep. It is a community, it is a home, it is the place where people find hope. It is worth protecting. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. I have no questions. I'm going to go back to two Lynn? No, Shannon? Shannon, can you go back to the podium, please? Councillor Harris has a question.
Yes, thanks for coming in this morning and presenting to us. You live at the Better Tent City?
Correct.
And how long have you been there?
I've been there for 5 years.
5 years. Okay, thanks.
Shannon, yeah, you can go up the center aisle too. So there were two delegations who weren't here. Is Diana Myers here? Okay, and Nadine Green. Nadine, you're here with us now? You have the podium and you have 5 minutes.
Hello. Hello, everyone. As you know, my name is Nadine Green. I am one of the founders of A Better 10 City, along with Jeff Wilmer and Ron Doyle. Most of you know about my story, about getting evicted from my convenience store for carrying on as a shelter. Then Ron Doyle and Jeff Wilmer asked me to bring the folks who were staying at my store to Lot 42, as long as I live and work there. I said yes. I was the only staff member at the time. I lived in a tent for 7 months, making sure that everybody was safe until we got the tiny homes. That was the start of A Better 10 City. I made a pledge that I'm going to live and work in a tiny home. I made a pledge that I'm going to live and work at A Better 10 City in my tiny home as long as, so that all the people who is homeless get a home, housing and food. But now you're planning to evict me once again. A founder of the tiny home movement that was modeled in communities across Canada is about to become homeless and unemployed. I was told that if I cannot stay and I will have to apply with the working center. But I am not the only one. Implementing a no visitor policy at 49 Ardelt would cause about 40 people to become homeless. That's 40 visitors. In addition to myself, many of the residents and visitors get paid to carry out small jobs, and their employment will end with the hiring of more full-time employees by the working center. I think with the board being dissolved was triggered by board members jumping off our board so that this could go through. The people at A Better 10 City are known for being the hardest to house. Many have severe trauma, mental health, and trust issues, as well as addiction. We are a family at A Better 10 City and have been for 6 years. We enjoy freedoms at our home that shelters don't allow. We are better. I was not invited to the table to help create the report you are receiving today. I think it was wrong that neither the working center nor the regional staff asked me for my input into the planning. Peter Sweeney approved the report without even a conversation with me. A couple years ago, I received a standing ovation at the mayor's dinner. Today, I feel hurt and abandoned. Are we in the 17th centuries? That a founder, Jeff Wilmer, is not the only founder of A Better 10 City. I am asking that I may be permitted to continue living at A Better 10 City in my tiny home to continue my pledge. My home was given to me by Ron Doyle, and he does not approve of this. I am also asking that you continue to permit visitors at A Better 10 City in addition to the site that the report mentions. Sorry. Let's have 2 locations that permits visitors 24/7. I would also like to stop referring to the community as A Better 10 City if you take it over July 20th, because it should not be called A Better 10 City if you're going to be doing this to our friends. Most of all, I also wish that A Better 10 City would remain private and new board members would be recruited to manage the site. But I fear this is too late. My understanding is that A Better 10 City costs about $1 million to run. Why is it that increasing it to $6 million, especially when there are no visitors to support? Does the report contain details of what else you will be getting for this money? I had hoped for additional housing, but I didn't see that in the report. I am very worried about the people of A Better 10 City after July 20th. Some have already told me that if things change too much, they will go back to living in the woods. I am worried about the people who came by for a bite to eat, a shower, or a load of laundry. Please take a real human approach in your decision. Thank you. One love.
Thank you, Nadine. I have no questions, but thank you for coming in to provide your perspective.
Thank you.
Colleagues, that is all the delegations today. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next agenda item is the report. It is a Better Tent City Transition and Subsidization or Stabilization Plan. And I would call on Peter Sweeney, Commissioner of Community Services, to introduce the report.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair Redmond and Regional Council. Just a couple of contextual comments before we open it up for questions. I want to acknowledge the references multiple times today to the complexity of this situation, of the individuals affected, and point out that the report goes out of its way to acknowledge that the transition that is being proposed will take time, and that there are indeed two separate and distinct streams of investment that are being called for. One is for direct operational support at the existing site, and an additional investment stream to support individuals who will be further impacted with investments in the community, both for drop-in space and supportive housing and other forms of support where we can. I do want to take a minute to acknowledge and thank volunteers, staff from A Better Tent City for the work that has been done over the last 6 years, and thank all the efforts that have gone into building that community and that work. I also do want to acknowledge the point of clarification, Jeff, that you made, and apologize for any references in the report that suggested otherwise. So agreed that was the appropriate clarification to make. So thank you for that. I do also, before we go further, I do want to acknowledge for council that the report before you is not one that comes without risk, both operational risk. This is, again, a complex proposition to propose. It also comes with, a significant financial investment that is required. It's noted in the report that the full annualized investment that this would require would be over and above the current budget pressures that council heard from my regional colleague staff a couple of weeks ago, and so that will further add pressure to the 2027 operating budget and any offsets that may be required. There are also a couple of references in the report to some further work that needs to be done around due diligence around the site, approvals, amendments, and things like that. So I do want to just, again, acknowledge that by approving this report today, there's still work to be done to ensure that this work can continue. And then lastly, before I turn it over, I just want to, again, further acknowledge that as Jeff noted, regional staff were approached a few months ago, well into the 2026 year. This was not something that staff had on their operating plan for this year, and as such, a number of folks had to shift priorities and drop what they were doing to jump in to bring this to you today in a timely manner. So I want to thank particularly my colleagues in both legal and facilities, and of course Ryan and the housing team, and also council for providing an opportunity to give us a bit of time to put something together for you to consider today. Both Ryan and I are here to answer any questions, and we're in your hands, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. We have a list of questioners. Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions. I'm prepared to move the report when you're ready for that, and then I would have some comments.
Thank you. Is there anyone prepared to second the motion? Seconded by Councillor James. So we now have the motion on the floor. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Erb?
I'm assuming there's no questions.
I have a list of speakers who I will go through, so I can come back to you if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah.
Councillor James, you might make a comment, or you come back. Okay. Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Chair. I'm not debating whether a better tent city has merit. I'm debating balance. I'm concerned we're committing significant funding to a better tent city while urgent needs in Cambridge and other parts of the region still are not being met. Porchlight's warming center was over capacity all winter. 138% over capacity was the lowest. They experienced 198% was the highest. Thrive, which operates MAX, which is multi-agency community service spaces, which operates at 150 Main, served hundreds of people from 1 to 4 p.m. and needs to add morning hours to adequately service Cambridge homeless population. We know the Women's Center, the Women's Shelter, which has 20 beds, turned away almost 300 people for service, and they're looking for a permanent home. This isn't hypothetical, it's what we're seeing right now. So I'm not confident regional funding will address Cambridge's needs quickly enough. So I'm asking we reduce ABTC amount and redirect some of these funds to these immediate frontline supports in Cambridge or other needs in the region. I don't know if I need to add to this, like an amendment to this motion, or get some assurance from staff. Like what I see is when we hit budget next year and we've added so many million for this location, that's going to negatively affect the amount of money we have for other areas in the city, in the region, sorry. I'm also going to propose that a policy change, and that will come in August or September, which talks more about equity, and equity does include geography, serving people where they are. And I know that it's in the past, many of our major services are in Kitchener, and people in Kitchener think that it's fine, people from Cambridge can just come there. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. And in terms of the need we're seeing at Better Tent City with the visitors, et cetera, I wouldn't be surprised if many of them actually are from Cambridge because Cambridge is so underserved. So I would like to look at that, and I know that this isn't the time necessarily for this, but I would like maybe talk to advice from Commissioner Sweeney. Do I need a amendment asking to reduce the amount in this motion to guarantee that there's funding for Cambridge and other areas? Or can I leave it as this because it actually doesn't necessarily even mention a Better Tent City all the way through. It's increasing housing services capital program. I guess I'm asking for advice.
Okay, and Commissioner Sweeney, as you answer, I hear a whole bunch of questions in there. One of them is the priority. One of them is where the funding's coming immediately and long term, and how that balancing act is addressed. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the questions, Councillor Wolf. I will acknowledge that that one of the challenges with this work in this particular file is the balance of what type of response and how proportional it is to the needs of the current population. You've heard there are upwards of 55 residents at a Better Tent City and anywhere between 25 and 40 folks who frequent the site on a regular basis. So that's a real group of individuals that need to be considered in any of this work. Not moving forward with some sort of supportive plan would have an impact on those individuals and on the community at large. So I would say what staff have put forward is our best professional advice and recommendation in terms of the true investments required to do this work well. And then the other piece I would add that might address some of your comments, you will see in the report, in the appendix, we have a line item called Person and System Stabilization Funding. those are community-based resources. Those are not fully allocated to one specific location or one specific organization. And so we know that if there will be supports required for those individuals who will no longer be staying at a Better Tent City on a full-time basis, those unique needs are unique, obviously, and so this is an allocation across the system, which absolutely, depending on the individual circumstances, could result in those dollars being invested across the region. So just to your point, the resources will follow the individuals to the greatest extent possible.
Okay. Councillor Wolf?
Thank you. It answers that answers the need you have for a Better Tent City. Can I read what I was proposing if I did an amendment and just see if they think it's appropriate?
So you're questioning the quantum. So I guess, Commissioner Sweeney, can you maybe delve in a little bit as to why the 2.5 million immediately and the 2.56 million on an ongoing basis, how you arrived at that quantum?
Well, no, I can see how I arrived at it, but I still am not confident that that's not going to affect funding for the rest of the region in terms of, when we look at budget, which we know we'll say whatever our budget is, we'll say it's 4% but and then it always comes to cuts and always comes. So I'll just read you if you don't mind, the amendment and hear comment.
That's absolutely fine, but really what you're asking is what won't get done if you lower it and what's the right amount to lower it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the risk that I had pointed out at the beginning around the financial impact relative to the in-year investment and the pressure that will create on the regional budget for 2026 and then going forward. And so there have been discussions around this horseshoe, around targets for 2027. There will be a new council. This will be, in effect, added to those pressures. And depending on the will of council in terms of the overall regional budget, there is absolutely a scenario where the investments being considered today may need to be offset by further reductions, not just in housing and homelessness, but across all of the region and all of the programs that we offer. We will, of course, be in council's hands at that time, so I can't give you a specific offset for that. I will say that the budget that we've put forward in the report today is based on our experience, our understanding of known actual investments and costs, our experience at Herbs Road, and our experience with supporting individuals from homelessness into shelter and into long-term housing over the continuum.
So, Councillor Wolf, do you want to read what your proposed amendment is?
Yes. Whereas the region is considering funding for a Better Tent City, and whereas services are concentrated in Kitchener, therefore be it resolved that council support a Better Tent City in principle, and that staff provide an equity impact assessment, and that staff develop a parallel investment strategy for Cambridge.
I don't hear any numbers in there.
Well, if I want a number, I would say reduce by $1 million the funding for a Better Tent City, and use it, or say share this money that's right now only designated for Better Tent City.
Okay, Peter wants to weigh in, and then I'll see if there's a seconder.
Yeah, thank you. So my staff advice to you, Councillor Wolf, is that reducing the budget proposed for this particular piece of work will render the opportunity far too risky, and I would not propose this report going forward with a different number. I do not want to commit to serving the needs of the population that we're trying to with fewer resources than we've already identified. I appreciate the comments and the concerns, and we'll also just again reiterate that as the service system manager, our responsibility is to the entire region. We are trying to do our best to support an individual site and individuals and a community organization that has come to us to ask for what a path forward could look like to bring this particular operation into the formal housing stability system. And what you have before you is the investment required to do that.
So, Councillor Wolf, I didn't mean to pressure you into an amount, so if you want to say $1 million, you can, and if you want to leave your motion the way you first presented it with no numbers, that's your prerogative.
Okay, I think I'll leave it with no numbers, and at least we've got, yeah, I'll leave it with no numbers at this point.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Craig. I'm going to ask staff to, have you sent it to anybody in writing?
No, but I can give it to you.
Okay, I'm going to take just a short pause so everybody knows what they're talking about. We will now be talking about the amendment which is on the floor. So stay tuned. So colleagues, we're going to resume the meeting. I would ask people in the gallery to please take your conversations outside. So, Councillor Wolf, we now have your motion before us. Therefore, be it resolved that council support a Better Tent City in principle, and that staff provide an equity impact assessment, and that staff develop a parallel investment strategy for Cambridge. That is your motion. Councillor Craig? You understand? Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Speaking to the amendment. So this is an addition to the staff recommendation, Councillor Wolf, correct? Can we get them both up at the same time? So Articles 1 through 4 remain the same. 5, 6, and 7 are the additions through the amendment. And Councillor Hunick, you wanted to speak to the amendment?
Yes, please, Chair. I agree with Councillor Wolf's amendment in principle. I think there does need to be services throughout every part of our region for those that need them. I guess I feel better that this is in addition to, not instead of, the motion that was before us previously. I don't think taking away from a Better Tent City to give to another project is the way to make this happen well. So I think I would prefer to support this at a later date as opposed to the meeting about a Better Tent City. But that's just my thoughts. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Rodriguez.
I was in the queue to speak to the main and had some questions for staff on the main report, so if I can be added back in. But in the meantime, I'll just say if we can vote on all of these separately, I think number 5 frustrates all of the work above and really kind of frustrates 1 through 4. 6 and 7, I think I can support. I mean, again, I agree with them in principle, as Councillor Hunick mentioned, but I think you need some more time to kind of build out and think about what these mean and what is an equity impact assessment. What are we actually assessing? What is it actually achieving? Similar to the parallel investment strategy. Is it a strategy for, what is it a strat, like what type of service are we strategizing around? I think it's good work. I just would perhaps maybe if Councillor Wolf's amenable, if this could be dealt with as part of a broader package coming to a future committee meeting, say in August, that she has a chance to, and Councillor Craig have a chance to work with staff on kind of building this out and thinking through it a little bit more. I think it's perhaps distinct and separate from what we're tackling today with respect to a Better Tent City.
So, Councillor Rodriguez, I would agree with you, and having just seen the writing now, I would tell you that I think number 5 does frustrate the preceding 4 points. So I guess I'd look to Commissioner Sweeney or Ryan if you want to speak to this.
Yeah, just I would want to understand, I think I'll speak on behalf of Ryan and the team of just specifically what, I mean, we have our own definition of what an equity impact assessment looks like here through our READY lens. So just would want to make sure that we have clarity on that. Number 7, obviously we're in the hands of council, but also we'll reiterate that as the service system manager for the entire region, we're required to take a system and community-wide approach and lens. I also do acknowledge and appreciate some of the unique circumstances and needs in the city of Cambridge. We do have data in terms of how the resources are allocated across the community, and if council would be so willing, we would commit to take direction when we come back and plan and budget to ensure that we provide, a data-informed overview of the resources and how they're allocated, where there's opportunities for improvement in the budget process. Again, in your hands, but open to that direction if council so chooses.
Thank you, Commissioner Sweeney. Councillor Gowing, do you want to speak to, or Councillor Rodriguez, do you have a further comment?
I was just saying, if I could be added back into the queue for the main motion once we deal with this. Thank you.
We can do that. Councillor Gowing, are you going to speak to the amendment?
I was going to speak to the main motion, but I'm going to ditto what Councillor Rodriguez said, and Peter answered my question on the amendment. So if I can be put back in the queue.
Okay, and I have heard a request, and I'm happy to acquiesce that we take 5, 6, and 7 separately, if that is the will of council. I don't see anybody objecting to it.
Chair, is it an option to refer this to August? Okay, sorry. Sorry.
So the complication is that the amendment is part of the staff recommendation. This is time sensitive and cannot be put off till August. So I guess it could be defeated, and then Councillors Wolf and Craig could ask for it to come back as a notice of motion in August. But it would have to be separate from the main motion that is before us that staff presented. And again, that is time sensitive. So I got a whole bunch of speakers. Councillor Wolf, are you going to solve all this issue for us?
I'm okay with referring it to August, and we'll come back with a more explanation and possibly a different motion. So I can I can withdraw it. I could withdraw the amendment if that makes it simpler.
Okay, it would, but we need unanimous consent. Do we have unanimous consent to withdraw the amendment, and with the knowledge that it will come back to a future meeting, perhaps with different wording, but the same intent? Councillor Craig.
Just a point of order. Why do we need unanimous consent to withdraw an amendment that somebody has proposed? I'm just interested in that.
I'm going to let the clerk tell you.
Through the chair, once the amendment has been moved and seconded, it's in the hands of council and no longer the mover and seconders. So it would be, it's required that it's unanimous consent. Otherwise, council should be voting on the amendment.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So I'm assuming we have unanimous consent?
Well, Chair, I have a question, though, before we carry on in relation to this amendment and the process we're proceeding with. So no, I'm not giving unanimous consent. I would like to ask a question.
Okay, then we do not have unanimous consent. So the other option is that we would then have to defeat this and we would vote on it separately. So Councillor Gowing. Okay, Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. I was speaking to the main motion, but I also wanted to support, say ditto to Councillor Gowing and Rodriguez. But just a point of clarification also. Councillor, not Liggett, Wolf. Could come back after the questions are asked and then withdraw. Correct?
If we have unanimous consent, we could try once more.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McCabe, is this on the amendment?
Yes. So thank you. So I'm curious about a couple of things about your amendment, Councillor Wolf. For clarity, is there a site in Cambridge that you are proposing for a parallel investment strategy similar to either a Better Tent City or 1001 Herbs Road, or are you looking for direct investment from the region into existing nonprofits that deal with housing and homelessness? In Cambridge, sorry.
Okay. Mostly existing places. For instance, the warming center would like to be able to be open 365 days of the year because they need it. In terms of new investment, the women's shelter is looking for a permanent home in Cambridge, so that's a need there. Thrive, which runs the MAX program, would like to have morning hours, and that would actually really help the warming center, where the men have to leave at 7 a.m. and there's no place really for them to go until 1 p.m. So if there were morning hours, it would be easier for them to close the warming center at Wesley and have a place for them to go. And they could actually go, let's say, from 8 till 11, from 11 o'clock till 1 o'clock, they can go to the Trinity table for lunch. But right now, we've got gaps in service for our
So not a
homeless.
new site, but support for existing nonprofits. Can I just ask a follow-up then?
Yes.
So I'm curious if you would also, understanding that, if you and the rest of council are, like, if you've got concerns about the funding being recommended to, I would say, sort of save a Better Tent City, if you were considering redirecting some of that funding to the Working Center's Victoria Street property, which is built and my understanding is empty, and then direct some of the remaining funding to what you're proposing in Cambridge.
Well, yes, I guess my concern was with $6 million going to a Better Tent City, other areas of the city are left, like the Working Center, those apartments, and our needs in Cambridge are left underfunded and undermet.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've got a problem that we have to fix, basically, with a Better Tent City, and we've been told that this is the amount of money they need.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of
So
left
can I
like
direct
many of
that
us.
question to staff then?
Yeah, because Peter wants to jump in, so we've got clarification, Councillor McCabe, rather than sort of this ongoing dialogue. So I'll let Commissioner Sweeney weigh in.
I will, and if Councillor McCabe, if you need further clarification, I'm happy to provide it. I just want to just point to the report and the appendix in particular. So of the 5.76, I'm just going to use the annualized numbers for simplicity here. Of the 5.76 total operating investment, 2.9 of that is specifically for the operations at the existing Better Tent City Ardelt Avenue site. The remaining resources within that 5.76 envelope are for community-based investments to support individuals who may no longer be able to stay there, and including some capital contributions and some staffing impacts. So just to be clear, the 5.76 million is not the operating agreement for the Ardelt site. 2.9 is, which is almost similar. I just want to make sure that we're clarifying because there's some numbers. And the 2.9 is similar to the operating contract at Herbs Road, just for clarity.
But thanks for that. But my question really is, I mean, the residents here said they don't want the region. The region's being asked to take this over. Residents are saying they object to that for various reasons. So instead of putting this amount of money, operating in capital, into a Better Tent City, in essence to save it, as the board of Better Tent City has requested, is there another option that would be put some of this money to move to, like, put some of the people who are homeless or, you know, who will be made homeless through this process into existing beds, supportive housing beds that I understand exist at the Working Center, and then, as Councillor Wolf is proposing through this amendment, put some of the remaining money into, into improving shelters and supporting shelters and services in Cambridge.
Peter?
So again, we're in the hands of council. The task before us was to develop a feasibility plan for continued operation of the Ardelt Avenue site with a full-time operator within the housing stability system, and that's what's before us. If council does not wish staff to go down that path and support the Working Center and a Better Tent City to transition that site into the housing stability system, then the outcome of that would effectively be a Better Tent City, as they've already decided, winds down as a board or an organization in some form, and the outcome of that then is not within the operational purview of the regional housing stability system. And so we would support individuals who would be presumably asked, all of those people presumably asked to leave that site. That would add a 90-person pressure to the existing system, which would have knockoff effects. So we are in council's hands on what to do here. The alternative would be to allow that decision to be made and for the region not to provide resources for another operator to come in under the guidelines and system responsibilities of an operator within our system.
Thank you.
Councillor Craig.
No, I talked to Mr. Sweeney about perhaps moving this down the road so we have more time to really contemplate everything that's happening. There's a number of issues here. Of course, there's the cost for, that's being debated in terms of moving this forward. There's the individuals, and I've been out to a Better Tent City on a number of occasions, talked to Nadine, and certainly have come away understanding the acute needs of the people there. And there's no question about that. On the other hand, Councillor Wolf raises an issue of equity. It's not something unfamiliar to council that I've raised on different issues and Councillor Wolf is raising on this issue. And I think it needs to be attended to. So I'm supporting the amendment, and I'm in the hands of council in terms of where you're going with this. But the other issue here is the cost. And I keep hearing from people in the community that are really having difficulty with costs, not only what they're paying in taxes, but sort of absorbing future costs such as this in terms of where we're heading as a community. So I'll leave it right now at this point. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Salonen.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I guess my concern with not dealing with this amendment now, although I understand that there are also issues with this amendment in terms of its relationship to how it impacts the main motion. But if council were to approve the main motion as it was originally presented, and then we go back in August with an updated amendment that potentially fundamentally changes the funding available for a project that at that point would then be approved, I'm struggling with how to make that make sense, how we can suddenly just pull funding potentially. It's not that I'm against what both Councillor Craig and Councillor Wolf have mentioned in that equity, and yes, we do need to look at this, in my opinion, as a bigger picture, how this fits into the plan to end chronic homelessness. I just don't logistically understand how we could actually have a meaningful opportunity in August if today we make a decision on the main motion.
So, Mr. Sweeney, do you want to weigh in? I guess to underscore from my perspective, Councillor Salonen, I think it's a valid point, but I would also tell you that I think our staff always look at responses system-wide, not just specific. This is a specific point in time because of decisions that were made by Better Tent City leadership, and that's why we're dealing with it now. But Peter, do you want to just talk about sort of the approach to the plan to end chronic homelessness and filling the gaps that clearly we all acknowledge exist?
Yeah, certainly. And to be clear, when I was suggesting staff would be willing to take some direction to come back, I was specifically talking about the equity impact assessment and the specific, some data around the investments in Cambridge. I would actually concur with Councillor Salonen. I would be remiss if I wouldn't say approving a budget envelope for this piece of work that would be conditional upon a further conversation in August would not be something staff would recommend. So just want to provide that clarity. And again, just going back, more than willing to, we have our regular report to council on the PEC coming in, I believe, October. And so we, again, can take direction to ensure that in all of that, we specifically address some of the points brought up here today. And then, of course, as we bring forward a housing and homelessness budget consideration for 2027 in the fullness of time, to be sure to include some data on how we're arriving at where those investments would go.
Councillor Salonen?
Thank you. So, yeah, I guess my question then would go back to Councillor Wolf on understanding the fact that the funding envelope would not be able to change if council approves it today. What does she want to do? If the intent was to actually change the funding envelope to then make equity across the system, or, yeah, I guess I want to better understand that.
So before I go to Councillor Wolf, I'm going to look to the clerk just to say that if we take 5, 6, and 7 individually, we have the option of passing whatever our preferences and how we see going forward as individual council members. And if 5 were not to be part of what came back, then would that impact necessarily the funding?
Through the chair, my reading of these 3 points, that none of them are affecting the funding envelope that is contained in the staff recommendation. So I think it would be appropriate for any or all of these to be included into the motion, if that's the will of council, and it would not. None of them would preclude council from revisiting the funding envelope as a part of the 2027 budget. But as Mr. Sweeney noted, like I think passing a funding envelope for the project at this juncture and then revisiting it in August would make it very, very difficult for staff.
Councillor Wolf?
I understand the confusion. I guess I would prefer to take $1 million out. However, I've been told that then it won't work for a Better Tent City. I guess what I hope to do in August or early September is come up with a sort of more of a policy about equity and looking at equity and geography as something, and hopefully making it so that we won't be defunding programs in Cambridge when they actually need to be increased. And then that would be up to the new council, as the clerk has said, if we were going to then take money away from an operating budget for Better Tent City and make sure that other programs aren't, defunded. So I guess at this point, I'll say that would be my plan, is just to, if this is defeated today, we'll just go forward with a policy motion in August where we talk about, various ways of achieving equity.
So, Councillor Saladin, you were the one that still had questions. Do you still have questions, or are you, if I ask for unanimous consent, which I can do again, Councillor Wolf and Councillor Craig, to withdraw this amendment, deal with the main motion with the knowledge that something on a thematic basis would come back at a future meeting, which wouldn't necessarily speak to the funding of a Better Tent City, correct?
Correct, in August, yeah.
Okay. Do we have unanimous consent to withdraw the amendment? Okay, so we have unanimous consent. We will now withdraw the amendment. So we're now back to the main motion. And I do have a list of speakers. Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Commissioner Sweeney, when I read the report and when I woke up this morning, I was prepared to support the staff recommendation because since its inception, I've heard about the importance of community to the residents and the uniqueness of this model. And so even though the price tag was high, I value both of those things and so was prepared to support it. But it seems that there's a perception in the community that this is a regional takeover. Can you clarify for myself and for the community members who are assuming that if we do this in partnership with the Working Center, what is the regional purview to, for example, institute a visitor policy and hire certain individuals and so on and so forth? Because I thought the point was for regional council to show the value of this, but remain at arm's length from it, and so not to take it over.
Peter?
Thank you, Councillor Hunick. I do acknowledge that for the past 6 years, A Better Tent City has operated as its own community, volunteer-driven, mostly volunteer-driven, with staff. Community unto itself, it has, as you've heard me say in these chambers before, it has largely operated sort of outside of the official housing stability system, despite the fact that we've been providing some funding for the organization over the last number of years. As you know, on our tally of resources available to the unhoused community, the 50 sort of official beds or 54 official beds at Better Tent City are included. But to go back to the original opening sort of context, the board of A Better Tent City made an independent decision, approached us, had a conversation with us about what a path forward would look like. If A Better Tent City was to be brought, or the site at Ardell Avenue was to be brought, the language we are using, transitioning into the housing stability system, which we are legislated to provide, and comes with certain expectation parameters. And so what we've put forward is, if that is a path forward for this particular site, a requirement would be a full-time 24/7 operator, and then operating policies that are expected of that operator in terms of safety and security, but also of housing outcomes, housing plans, and that the location acts as a shelter within our system, which by definition provides that care and support, but also the supports to help people move through the system. So if Council would endeavor and direct staff to follow that process and transition this particular site into the housing stability system, which we have legislated, and we all have legislated requirements and responsibilities for. This is what it looks like. It is not, of course, your only option, but that is there are responsibilities and expectations that come with being inside the housing stability system. Further, I also just want to acknowledge that further operational decisions around hiring and certain practices are not something that as the service system manager, we direct or dictate, but we do have expectations around outcomes and health and safety.
Councillor Hunick?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for speaking to the legislative requirements to maintain the site and keep it safe and abide by those rules that are provided for us. Can you speak to, because many of the delegates have given the impression that they do not want this to proceed in this way, if we choose not to fund ABTC under the working center's provision, then what happens to the community there?
Councillor, I don't want to hypothesize what would happen in that scenario, but what I will acknowledge is that the land at Ardell Avenue is co-owned by the City of Kitchener and the school board, and so we have no, if the region does not go forward with this proposal, then really it becomes some operational decisions, legal requirements on the board of A Better Tent City to wind down, and then decisions around that site would actually be in the hands of those who have jurisdiction over the land, in this case the City of Kitchener and the school board. So I couldn't really hypothesize. What I will say is we do know that there would absolutely be impacts to the individuals and to the community at large.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Earp.
This is not a question. I had my name is on here, I think, for comments because of the main motion, so I'll wait until you're taking the comments.
So the main motion is now on the floor and it's moved and seconded. So
okay, so I can.
And it's unamended, so you may comment.
Well, you know, it's obvious that this is a very, very emotional issue for particularly those people that have been involved in living in a tent city or part of it. And I think it's important for all of us, council and staff, to reassure those that are involved that everyone is going to respond with as much respect and that's possible to make sure that this transition works as smoothly as possible. And in many respects, we're turning a page here in the history of a Better Tent City. And I think it's important to acknowledge the visionary thinking and determination of Ron Doyle in almost single-handedly creating this place. His heart was obviously in the right place, and his tenacity, his perseverance, which many of us experienced in the use of his personal resources, were fundamental in shaping a Better Tent City. And I think Ron would be pleased to see that this transition is taking place and that there's going to be some stability put into the system. And I think equally important are the people who volunteered over the last number of years to keep this resource open. And Jeff was here earlier, board members, the dean, support staff, people who volunteered with food, did maintenance. Thanks for carrying on the vision that Ron created. I know he would be pleased, and then hopefully this vision can continue. I'm pleased to support this recommendation and very appreciative of the work that the regional staff have done in developing this framework with members of a Better Tent City and the Working Center. And we know from the experience of the Better Tent City in leadership at the Herbs Road site, they have developed a model that works and is meeting the needs of the people that live there. And it's important to remember that since Herbs Road opened in 2023, it has supported 158 people. 38 of those have been moved on to different forms of supportive housing, which I think is a success rate of 24% people moving on from that facility into supportive housing. And that number is similar to what the House of Friendship is experiencing in their shelter care on Weber Street in Waterloo, which to me proves that individuals living in a safe and a controlled environment for a number of months, their lives can be stabilized so they can be moved on to other housing options. Hopefully with a Better Tent City, beginning to bring that same philosophy to a Better Tent City, we'll see a similar outcome for stabilizing the lives of the individuals that are living there. There's a big price tag attached to this initiative. However, I don't think we can afford not to do it. Council will remember that our goal early on in this term was to create another Herbs site. However, difficulty in finding a location put that on hold. However, we did put some of that money into a reserve, which we are using it now. While we're developing this facility, I think it's important to remember that the funding envelope for a Better Tent City and what we're paying on an annual basis at Herbs Road is the same. The additional costs to this site are for the people who have been visiting a Better Tent City during the day as visitors or perhaps staying overnight, is putting resources into place in the community so those folks don't fall between the cracks. So hopefully the resources of developing another tiny home project and resources in place for people who have been part of a Better Tent City but not living there as permanent residents is going to relieve the stress for them personally, knowing that there's going to be supports in place, and for other service providers in the community so that the burden does not fall on them. None of this would be possible without the cooperation of the City of Kitchener and the Waterloo District School Board. They were partners several years ago when a new site was required, and they stepped up to the plate to make this happen. And this vision is a reality because of them now again agreeing to this site, and I think we owe them a significant piece of thanks. There's going to be some heavy lifting that needs to be done by the region, the Working Center, and our community partners. And understanding the anxiety, what can happen in this transition, we understand that is going to create some impacts. But I think what's important is that the supports are being put in place to help some of the most vulnerable in our community. And I know while the effort is challenging, we have a track record to prove that we can do this, and I think it's another significant step in the plan to end chronic homelessness. So I'm happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Erb. Councillor Gowing.
Thanks. Yeah, he is next on the list. Rodriguez. Councillor Rodriguez.
Councillor Rodriguez.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thanks to staff for bringing this forward. And I want to acknowledge the really real concerns that were raised today by some of the residents and some of the delegations around what this change will represent. And that there is, I think we need to be accountable to ourselves and to those folks about how how this transition plan evolves and how we report back on that. And I won't steal Councillor Gowing's thunder, but I think we've come to a good place on an amendment to have some accountability in terms of how this transition plan evolves, how we continue this conversation. I hope this is the beginning of a conversation of this new site, and hopefully we can go forward from there. Commissioner Sweeney, my only question just relates to the Person and System Stabilization Fund, and I appreciate that you've spoken to how it's distinct and separate from the operating agreement that's required for the site, and unfortunately has been kind of conflated in media reports as one bucket. Could you maybe just speak to, in a bit more specificity if you can, how those dollars are anticipated to be used? And I have concerns about how they're going to be used, and I think there's different thoughts around this horseshoe and in the community about where the best value is. And I think we, again, need to be accountable to how we're using those dollars, recognizing that they could be in Cambridge, they could be in Waterloo, they could be anywhere in the region, and it's a system that those dollars are going to. But could you just speak to maybe more of the programs or services or options that, because these are, and clarify that, would you classify these as new spots, or is this just sort of stability funding for the system?
Through you, Chair, I'm actually going to ask Ryan to answer that question, Councillor Rodriguez, if that's okay with you.
Thanks for the question, Councillor. So I'll start with your last point first. So these would be additional net new places and spaces to support the transition of a better tent city. As has been alluded to a number of times this morning, making this transition is going to impact the ongoing residents, yes, but also visitors, guests that can't remain there over time given the capacity of the site. So this is to create additional spaces for those individuals to be that will be impacted by this transition. These dollars will go to support additional spaces in supportive housing, additional overnight warming and cooling spaces, and motel uses as well. So they can create additional spaces for that population, or also create and free up space through movement in other parts of the system. For example, somebody moving from emergency shelter currently into supportive housing, creating an emergency shelter availability in that scenario. So working through all of those with some flexibility on those dollars to create the spaces, should council approve the motion today.
Councillor Rodriguez?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that. And that, again, I think this is a pretty open ticket right now, and I think we need to track how this is being used, and I think there's a lot to gain in that. And I guess just my one question of clarification based on what you said, would you say that some of this funding is filling provincial funding gaps that exist in our community with respect to some spaces?
All of it. All of it.
This sounds like a Peter question.
Yeah, so we do know that, and we've had this conversation in chambers before, that chronic homelessness is not just a housing challenge; it's a health challenge. And so we've been clear that, in particular, as it relates to supportive housing beds, there is neither enough of those beds being funded, and work absolutely needs to carry on for advocacy. And we appreciate council's role in that work. For, in this particular case, for health dollars to be aligned to supportive housing beds. And we also, on the other side of that, we do, as I've alluded to, we have a legislated requirement to be the service system manager for housing and homelessness. And so we do set those service level targets that the municipal council is responsible for. And so your comment and any further direction in terms of coming back to council with some clarity on how those resources end up being allocated is completely appropriated. And we're, of course, willing and able to do that.
Thank you, Chair.
So Councillors Rodriguez and Gowing, I can tell you two apart very distinctly, but on my list, I had Gowing next and not Rodriguez. So now over to you, Councillor Gowing.
It's all fair. Thanks, Chair. So I want to start off by saying that I recognize the importance of taking care of people who are living at a better tent city. These are real people, and we cannot simply allow a transition like this to happen without support, stability, and a clear plan. At the same time, I do have concerns about the cost and the long-term financial impact. The region is being asked to approve significant capital and operating funding, and in 2027, impact could be substantial. I do not want this to become an open-ended commitment without clear outcomes, accountability, and a plan to move people into a more permanent and stable housing. So I am proposing an addition to the motion, and I can read it out if you so ask, Chair.
You need to read it out.
Thank you.
This one just arrived too on our desk.
Yes. Can you scroll down a little more so I get it all? There we go. So the amendment reads, and that after the 4 points that are at the top, then I'm getting there. So the motion staying as is, this is just an addition. So, and that staff report back to Community and Health Services Committee as part of a regular update reports on the plan to end chronic homelessness, on the status of a Better Tent City transition and stabilization plan, including A, actual operating capital expenditures to date, B, the number of ABTC residents assessed and connected to individual housing plans, C, the number of residents transitioned into permanent, supportive, and alternative housing options, D, site safety, infrastructure, and regulatory compliance updates, E, performance measures for the working center operating agreement, F, options to reduce or offset the 2027 levy impact, including provincial, federal, philanthropic. Thank you. And community partner funding. I can spell it, I just can't say it. And G, confirmation that any 2027 funding request will be considered through the regular 2027 budget process and not treated as automatic ongoing base funding without council approval.
So this has been moved and seconded, and I'm going to call for another 5-minute recess so staff can look at this, and we will reconvene after they had a chance to digest this.
Sorry, Chair, just on that topic, staff have looked this over already and have approved the wording.
Okay, but the rest of us haven't, so I'm taking a 5-minute. I'm trying to stem this tide of throwing things on our desk in the middle of a meeting and not being able to contemplate. So out of respect for all of our colleagues, we're taking
just on what you just said there, sure. Chair. I just want us to remember when you're putting motions forward, particularly on things that we know have been coming. I don't want to speak for Councillor Huning, but she does have she has low vision. So it's easy for me to listen to you and anyone putting these forward and then read it and continue to read it. But please, let's be a little more respectful of our colleague who has low vision and needs these motions in advance so she can fully digest them. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now recess for 5 minutes. So colleagues, we're going to resume this meeting, and I want to thank staff for being able to answer some councillors' questions one-on-one. I think it's really important before we're asked to vote on this. Councillor Leggett, I have you next, speaking to the amendment. Councillor Harris, speaking to the amendment.
Well, I was really just in for the main motion, frankly. So I want to be put back in for the main motion. I did speak to Councillor Gowing about this, in terms of item number G, because today we're technically making a significant decision that will impact not only this fiscal year, which I believe we're dipping into reserves to compensate for, but next and the next term of council. Like, this is a significant financial decision. And I'm just wondering if there's more clarity around, sending direction to staff that around the G, that, we support obviously we have to deal with the issue at hand, and we have to deal with the residents until further time that a new council and a new budget cycle can properly, approve and agree with this plan, because it automatically adds significant cost to the taxpayer for next year. And, there's an election in a few months, and a new council in a few months, and a new budget cycle coming up. And I just think it's not, prudent for us to be making that decision today. However, in council's hands, and that would be my only comment to the amendment, is, get some more clarity around G on how we deal with that.
Councillor Gowing?
It does change things significantly.
Yeah,
What does G look like in your world?
So in my world, it's looking at it as it's not a permanent thing, that it's in there so that and Councillor Wolf said it perfectly a minute ago, is if something happens with the working center itself, or something happens at the site, that funding isn't a permanent thing that they can just continue. We're writing a blank check to it, that there's accountability on the operating side of things, so that we have the ability that it's not a permanent thing, because we can't keep signing blank checks. And like you said, it's on the backs of the taxpayer. So we really need to respect that. But on the other side, where this is going is just a report back to council on the progress of the transition. For me, we still need to take care of people, but there's a balance on the financial side as well.
So, Councillor Harris, I had exactly the same question. So, Chair's prerogative here, and Councillor, demoting you, Peter. Commissioner Sweeney, can you just talk? You started off talking about risk, and I guess that's where my mind went with G as being the problematic number in this amendment.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I guess the first comment, my response to G is that would apply to all of the work that we do across community services, across housing homelessness, and I look around the horseshoe to my colleagues. So that is not inconsistent and unexpected. I would say, going back to Councillor Harris's point, about a few weeks ago, my colleague Wayne and team alluded to council that our current overall budget pressure was around 6%. Investing in this and assuming that it will get annualized, we're now at 7%. So depending on where the next term of council wants to go on an overall target, any additions that we add in year that remain intact, obviously, and if there's a reduction, we would need to be looking across housing and homelessness not only, but again, other regional programs and services to find some offsets. That risk is real. I would also just say that the accountability that we hold as a service system manager, both to this regional council, to the province, to ourselves, and to the community, is one that we take very seriously. And so through every annual planning cycle, we are always looking at where are the often limited resources best allocated in an environment where the inflow of chronic homelessness, due to many, many environmental factors and social factors and financial factors beyond the control of our staff team and our community, sometimes don't always line up. Does that help?
Thank you. Councillor Salonen, speaking to the amendment.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So I am supportive of the amendment, in particular Section G, although on my screen it shows up as 7 on eScribe. So really just wanting to confirm that would mean that instead, if council were to approve this amendment and then the amended motion, this would mean that this is temporary and it is fully in the hands of the next council. It is not assuming the financial impacts that are in the staff report becoming annualized, because that's really where my big concern with the entire motion and process here is this is a huge price tag that I don't really know our tax base has to sustain.
So you're speaking in favor of the amendment, correct?
I am, but I was seeking full-on clarity that if this amendment passes and that the motion as amended then passes, staff are also in agreement that that would mean that the work they'd be going forward with would be about 8 to 10 months, and they would not know if they have the next funding envelope to proceed, versus what I see it as currently presented in the staff report that they're looking for council to approve annualizing this funding.
Peter?
Councillor Salonen, and I guess all of council, we make a point of clarifying with all of our funded partners that in many respects, we are in a 12-month year-over-year funding cycle. And, we are always subject to the approval of an overall budget. And then through that budget process, it's up to us as staff to bring to council the priority work that can fit within the envelope that council is suggesting. So Councillor Salonen, yes, and that's a conversation we have with all of our funded partners all throughout the year. Does that help?
Okay, Councillor Schatz on the amendment.
Thank you. I support the amendment, and I also share the comments that have been made about the amendment sort of changing some significantly, I think, the intent of the original recommendation. And when I look at the original recommendation in light of the amendment, I would actually make another change. And I'll just say this as a comment, and council can decide what they want to do with it. But that would be to the capital expense that the 2.5 million in capital upgrades be not deferred, because there may be capital upgrades that are really necessary, but sort of put on hold or mitigated until such time as we get that report that we're asking for in August and the overview, and then subject to the 2027 budget. Or is that direction?
Can we accept that as a comment, or do you want to amend the amendment? I'm looking to the clerk if that actually is an amendment.
I don't really want to amend the amendment, but it sort of affects the main motion in my mind. So.
Good call.
We'll leave it.
Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm speaking to the amendment as well here. This is distressing to everyone. I came here today with the decision to not support the motion at all, because maybe it's my expectations are really too high, but when I think about the 25 to 26% success rate, that seems like a low bar to me. And I think we should be aiming higher, but and not allow our expectations to remain so low. And I don't want to be doing fear-based decision-making. And that's what I thought that was happening here. So I'm really happy to support this amendment, because accountability is the key here. And we're looking at success rates. Accountability is the key. If we don't do this today, I think that the cost would be more if we don't. So I'm very happy and pleased to see this amendment, and it allows me to support the original motion by it being on the floor.
Councillor James.
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair. I also wanted to speak on the amendment. I'm very happy to see this amendment, especially with the notion that there is no confirmed ongoing commitment until it goes through the next budget cycle or what have you. I also want to speak to the accountability piece with this and the reporting back to council and how important that is, especially in light of, concerns that have been raised by residents. And so that accountability piece is critical. And I think it's something that we as council will be held to, and those who are managing the site as well. So I'm happy to support the amendment to this motion.
Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question and a concern about number G, or letter G. And I just want to be, so we're talking about support from a future council. I'm just wanting to be clear from staff. Does this prevent you from moving forward on some of the things that have been planned for 2026? As my understanding, the transition with the working center is supposed to be taking place July, August, September. What can happen in 26?
Through
All
you,
right,
Chair.
Ryan, go ahead.
So if the report is approved today, we'll proceed as outlined in the report. The cautions around accountability and future year budget are taken, and to echo some of Peter's comments earlier, are part of a regular process for us and our providers in operating year to year anyways. So we will undertake the work and recognize that future years operating will be dependent on the budget process. How far we get through this year, hard to say at this point, but part of what's being built into this is that we'll come back and report before any decisions on outlook years need to be made at that point. So I think what I can say to you in answer, Councillor, is we'll undertake the work as outlined in the report, and the budget process through this year will dictate where we head in future years.
So it's fair to say that one hand is not tied behind your back for the 26th, that you can proceed with the main motion as planned.
Ryan?
Through you, Chair, that's how we'd take it for now, pending any difference in direction coming our way.
Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Chair, I too am supporting the amendment. I think we needed to put some parameters out there, and I like the fact that we will get reports and see where the money is actually going. I too, like Councillor Shantz, had a problem with the capital in the original motion, and I would almost like to see up to 2.5 million as opposed to, again, a blank check. If I'm not mistaken, when we built Herbs Road with 50 homes, I don't think it was 2.5 million, so I believe it was 1 million. I don't know, we just seem to be, I know things go up in price, but I'm just curious with that.
Peter, or Ryan? Peter?
Oh, I beat him to it. Actually, the capital investment for Herbs Road was 2.8, I believe. I would have to double check that. It was certainly more than $1 million, Councillor Wolf. But I will say the intention here is there are, and again, I ask Council to pay particular attention to some of the commentary in the report about some of the regulatory compliance and zoning work that still needs to be done. There also still needs to be some further work to be done to understand what the capital priorities are. And of course, we will be cognizant of whatever those investments are. They will also be managed by the partner, and the funding envelope right now will be considered in that context, both in terms of short and long term or potential term limits.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf. Okay. Councillor Craig.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to support the amendment also, and I agree with a number of the comments, so I'll make my speech short, maybe shorter. But I just want to say that, there's a number of issues. When I walked in here, I was really looking towards kicking this down the road somehow. And this is kind of a better way of handling it. And I'm pleased about that. And I think also I'm pleased about the fact that Councillor Wolf has brought up this whole issue around equity, and it has to be addressed. And we'll have further discussions on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Salonen?
Thank you. So with this amendment, again, if approved, fundamentally changing that it's going to more of a temporary situation to be reassessed and brought back at budget of 2027, what is the actual dollars then that will be required? Because again, it's kind of fundamentally changing the report, at least in my mind, from that financial implication. So I want to understand, what is the operating cost monthly from now until even say end of Q1 of 2027? What are the capital costs that I know some of my colleagues have raised that might not have to be to the full extent that were intended when this report was written? I want to know what the actual cost is going to be based off of G if it's approved.
Peter?
Yes, Councillor Salonen, I direct your attention to Appendix A of the report, which outlines the 2026 operating expenditure would be 2.56.
So it would not be changing though?
To my colleague Ryan's comments, our intention would be to start the work and do the work as planned and as outlined in the report. And then future years would be dependent on council's direction and budgetary decisions overall.
But is there any of that work that you wouldn't see as necessary to have to get you through those 8 months that maybe could be put off, I guess, is what I'm wondering.
No, not at this time. I wouldn't want to commit to reducing that amount. The report and the work that we've outlined is to the best of our ability a month-by-month view, and the associated costs are outlined in the 2026 column of Appendix A.
Okay, thank you.
So colleagues, I have no other speakers, but I'm going to take chair's prerogative and just weigh in and say I will not support this amendment. And I find this amendment really troubling, and Councillor Erb actually hit on what I would want to say, and that is there is a huge transition period that is going to go with the winding down of the leadership of a better tent city to whatever the new regime in dynamic is going to look like with the working center. And I, for one, do not want to set it up for failure. And I think we owe it to the people who are depending on living at a better tent city and those that we know we will have to reallocate. And for that reason, I will not support the amendment. I would tell you that I think from A to F are things that I would assume that staff would do regularly. We have, as a council, made tough decisions in the past. We have held our partners to account. We could not do what we do without our valued partners in the community, and I'm not going to enumerate all of them, but they are the ones that make sure that there are outreach workers. They are the ones that make sure that the gaps are filled. And do we need to do better? We always do, but these are huge price tags. So I will not support the amendment. I will support the main motion, and I would tell you that I would assume, and I guess, Peter, I'm going to look at you, a lot of these reporting mechanisms would come back, I would assume, on a regular basis as business as usual, correct?
That's correct.
So it's been moved and seconded. We are now voting on the amendment. Colleagues, it is carried, so we'll now be voting on the amended motion. It has been moved and seconded, so I'd ask you to use your e-scribe to vote. Councillor Harris. You need to turn your mic on.
I thought I pushed it, yeah. I had mentioned that I would still like to speak to the original motion. I don't know if there were others that were in the queue that were before me that wanted to speak to that and ultimately, so I'll leave that to you to go through, but I'd like to.
Go ahead, Councillor Harris.
Okay. You know, we've dealt with ABC or the Better Tent City now for some years, and obviously, you know, folks will know where I've stood on the matter, you know, in previous votes. And I will say it doesn't change today. I know that, you know, we have got a lot of great community people that have put time and equity and support into this important cause. I just feel as a region, You know, our job is to support, you know, the shelter system, which I believe this now will be. You know, I know the original intent of a Better Tent City was to provide more permanent housing to folks, but today and moving forward under the region, it will be an added shelter system for transitional housing. And I know that Councillor Erb, who's done a lot of great work on this file, spoke to the need for, you know, these folks to come in and live for a few months and transition into something more stable and supportive for them. And I believe that is where taxpayers' money needs to be invested the most. I've had, you know, public comment on the public report in terms of the cost. It is what it is. It is, you know, if you do the math, it's about $150,000 a resident per year. And when we have seniors and other hardworking individuals that go to work each day and have struggled to pay their rent of $2,000 a month, they have a difficult time swallowing the cost to do this. And as I asked one of the delegates today in terms of the length of their stay, and it was answered 5 years, that is not the intent and should not be the intention of taxpayers to support these folks. You know, I supported Herbs Road. I think we're doing great work up there in terms of, you know, helping short-term stays to get people off their feet and give them the support that they need. I know not all folks will be able to transition into permanent, you know, housing on their own, that they will continue to need additional supports. But that is the ultimate goal, is when you are you know, down and out. And again, I've been over to 100 Vic and met and spoke with each of the residents there and heard their stories. And I'm happy that we have the Herbs Road to help some of those individuals. But where our dollars need to be invested the most is permanent supportive housing. And that's where I'll continue to vote yes on, of course. But, you know, the cost to take over, you know, a Better Tent City. Again, the model is changing from a long-term stay to a now shelter type bed. And I believe we have to do our work to support those folks now up until perhaps next budget, until we can find a better plan for them. But at the cost of which we're proposing today, it is just not a good investment, frankly. And I want to see those people into better. And that's where I'll vote to support. And so I won't be supporting this. And I'm hopeful that between now and next budget cycle, we can come up with a plan to transition these folks into more stable, supportive housing, because that's where I believe our money's better spent. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. I don't disagree with Councillor Harris in many ways. I've said for many years that what we need is more supportive housing. We don't need more emergency shelter. The Herb Street and this has become more than emergency shelter, and so I think we need to work towards creating those as emergency spaces and not permanent spaces. That said, I do have a question for staff. I think the report, it's about 2.5 million for capital expenses. If we were to take that money and spend it somewhere else on, say, supportive housing, about how many units would we get with that?
Sounds like a Ryan Petitpier question.
He's calculating, recalculating.
Thanks for the question and some time through you, Chair, with the calculator. So $2.5 million, if you're to construct a new unit at sort of the lower end of construction costs, maybe that's around $300,000 a unit, and I think that's even significantly lower. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 10 units you might be able to construct. I'd also remind that that's one-time capital costs, and really where supportive housing needs on an ongoing basis are those supportive operational dollars every single year to support and maintain that housing for the individuals that are living there. So that would be a cost that would be in addition to the one-time capital costs, even at the low end on a per unit basis.
Right, and that's included in your motion here is support of staff. I think 3 staff maybe positions plus some other supports, and I recognize those are going to be needed no matter what we do. So I don't particularly have a problem with that. I am concerned with the capital costs because I'm not quite clear where we're going with all of this. So I like Councillor Wolf's suggestion of up to 2.5 million, but I also understand that you're very good at managing the funds that we give you, and so that you won't spend it foolishly. So would that be a friendly amendment to the motion? I'm not sure who moved and seconded.
So you're talking about number 2 for capital or 3 for operating?
2 for capital.
I'll second it if needed.
Peter, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I do actually. Thank you, Councillor Schatz. Our original estimates that assumed that every single item that we did an environmental scan on came in with an investment price tag, which would be almost 3 times this amount. So what we're recognizing and what we will prioritize through this capital investment is, first of all, it's going to be the responsibility of the operator, which is consistent with our role as system services manager, and we will take a health and safety approach first. So there will be, because we are now legally responsible for this site, there will come some regulatory requirements around health and safety that we will, from a risk perspective, be required to address. We feel that the 2.5 million envelope allows us to get started and to do that work without being able to give you the very specific health and safety risks that would come with a reduction. I would be uncomfortable recommending that we adjust that at now. I think the request and the ongoing sort of regular course of business to bring back accountabilities in terms of what's actually being spent, I hope will address some of those concerns that we're taking a health and safety approach on all of this.
So, Councillor Schatz, there are no friendly amendments, so if you want to put that amendment forward and it's seconded, then we'll have to vote on it.
I'll based on Mr. Sweeney's comments, I think I'll just leave it as it is and trust his judgment and staff's judgment on spending the dollars wisely. But I also just want to say that, you know, we've said before that we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars more on our a variety of social services and health services than what jurisdictions in other municipalities and other provinces are spending, and we continue to do that on the backs of our property owners, and we need to find a better way. Don't know how we do that. We keep trying. So hopefully we can find some provincial money to help with this, particularly in light of the complexity of the homelessness issues that we're experiencing here. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I am really struggling with this. I feel like we're backed in a corner, like we are just spending so much money over and over and over again. It's almost like something happens in community, come to the rich uncle or the rich aunt, and it's a lot. I do have a question for staff, and apologies if this has been asked before because I did have to step off. Now, with if this goes through, does this now become part of our plan to end chronic homelessness? How does this fit into what we're doing?
Peter?
Councillor James, I would say everything that we are trying to do as a service system manager in the housing and homelessness file is done through the lens of the plan to end chronic homelessness. So the provision of shelter and moving and supporting people from shelter and through the continuum to transitional, affordable, and long-term permanent housing is the output here. And so I would say yes, it's consistent with the plan to end chronic homelessness.
Okay. And then I guess that you've confirmed you're bringing back to us. Okay. All right. I think that's it for now. Thanks, Peter.
Councillor Salonen.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I do really appreciate the work that staff did on this and that A Better Tent Cities group has done on trying to ensure that residents have stability as their organization is winding down. Having said that, I do struggle and share a lot of the same sentiment that Councillor Harris shared. I appreciate that we are responsible for housing and homelessness as a region, but also recognizing that we have multiple pressures. Even though I supported the amendment, I can't actually support this motion. I think that really we need to be investing in, everybody knows my stance, housing first is really what I think we should be investing in as a model, opposed to having transitional housing. But I would not be able to support the use of these funds that really we don't have and our property tax base doesn't have. And I think even after hearing from residents today, I'm concerned of how they feel about the region stepping in. Again, I get that we were asked to, and I know that we're all trying to find solutions, and I believe that everyone's doing their best that they can. However, I was pretty concerned by a lot of the comments raised by residents today about their thoughts and not wanting to be a part of the system. I don't know where to go with that still, in terms of, again, we're responsible for housing and homelessness, and I think all of us want to help make the lives of all residents, whether they have a home or not, better in our region. But I'm still trying to process what was shared with us today as well, and where as decision makers we go with that. But just wanted to let folks know that I won't be supporting today's motion.
Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To some degree, I agree with Councillor Harris, but not fully. And I see this shelter system as similar and equal to the emergency departments in our healthcare system. Things happen in our lives, and we need emergency care from time to time. And the people who are living in shelters, who go into shelter on the first or second day, would not be suitable for supportive housing. And we need to recognize that. And we need to give them an opportunity for their lives to be stabilized, to be in an environment where they're safe, where they're getting the supports that they need. And so imagine the healthcare system without emergency departments. Where would those people go? How would they be cared for? And I don't think this is any different in what we're trying to provide for these vulnerable folks, that they need a place where we can stabilize them before we can move them into supportive housing. And nobody is going to get an argument from me that we don't need more supportive housing. We need it desperately all over the country and all over our province. But we can't move people into it immediately without being disruptive for the people that are living there.
Councillor Liggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hear the comments about the comments of the delegates, and this is exactly why many of us around the Horseshoe are reticent about even engaging in this, because these are people who have no concern about rules or living within the confines of being a community which we all adhere to. That's what keeps us from being a third world country, our rules and regulations and policies. And I think they've done themselves a disservice by the comments that they've made. I 100% agree with Councillor Salonen and with Councillor Harris. I have voted against this over and over and over again. I think, though, this place exists. We have no real choice in it at this point in time. But I will not support another one of these. These are people who need supportive housing. Some of them need caregiving, and we can't have these, people that are in this type of situation out on the streets just looking for another location. We have a location. We have the option of supporting it or not supporting it. And in this case, I'm going to support it, even though every fiber of my body says not to support it. I just think that we just don't have another option right now because we don't have the supportive housing. We don't have the support of the province for the funding for what is truly needed here. So I'm okay this time, but I won't be doing it again.
Councillor Gowing.
Thanks, Chair. I will echo some of the concerns of my colleagues here. I don't agree that continuing to spend money on emergency housing is a long-term solution. Our focus needs to be on permanent, stable housing. But this solution is the solution that's in front of us. People are living at a better tent city now. The current model is ending, and I do not believe we can walk away from them. Given the options right in front of us now, this is the most cost-effective approach for us to today. That is why I'm supporting this motion with the amendment. It gives council and the public regular updates on costs, outcomes, and whether people are actually being moved towards more stable housing. That's why I truly believe that we should pass this today, because it is the most cost-effective way to move forward today.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Gowing. People are living there. If we walk away, then they are essentially homeless, and it still is our problem. So I think we need to support this and use it. But to Councillor Erb's comments, I agree 100%. We need emergency spaces, but multiple years is not an emergency space. And so that's where I think we need that next step, because I've heard over and over again that many of the people who are in emergency spaces are ready to move into supportive housing, but we don't have those spaces. So I'll just say again, we need those next steps so that we can use the emergency spaces as emergency spaces, and they are short-term, which give people an opportunity to perhaps transition quicker into supportive housing. I'll support the motion.
Thank you. I have no more speakers. The amended motion has been moved and seconded. Please use e-scribe to vote.
Chair, I no longer have access to my e-scribe, but I'm opposed.
Thank you. Colleagues, that is carried. We've had no correspondence. The next motion I need is to enact the bylaws first, second, and third reading, and that is to confirm the proceedings of Council of Regional Municipality of Waterloo at a meeting held June 24th, 2026, be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered, and be signed by Regional Chair and Regional Clerk and sealed. Moved by Councillor Nowak, seconded by Councillor Wolf. Please use your e-scribe to vote. So colleagues, that is carried. I now need a motion to go into closed. And before everybody gets really excited, it's not a closed motion for today, but according to the Municipal Act, it's purpose for an education session related to water, and it will be held tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in the Waterloo County Room in accordance with Section 239 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001. The purpose is for an education session related to water. If I could have a moved by Councillor Gowing, seconded by Councillor Wolf, please use your e-scribe to vote. Colleagues, that is carried. Now we need a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Hunick. Do I have unanimous consent to adjourn?
I was going to ask if there's anything under other business, or is there not? We don't have.
I didn't have other business. Do you have other business, Councillor?
Well, just a comment, or if I'd like to make it. I don't want to be accused of being anti-democratic or anti-procedural bylaw by any of my colleagues, but our previous council meeting where we dealt with water issues, we had a number of amendments brought before us at the last minute. The same thing has happened again today. We have a procedure in place at budget time where we request amendments to be brought forward. I don't know what the time frame is before the meeting, so staff have an opportunity to respond to them properly, and that council members have a chance to see them. And I know, comments from delegates that are here may initiate the thinking of a council member to bring up an amendment. But I'm just wondering if there is a way to make the process work a little bit easier. We complain about our meetings going long, which is part of it because of amendments. We lose delegates who are here to understand what the debate is and what the final decision is, but they have to leave because it prolongs the meeting. And so, as I said, I don't want to, put a monkey wrench into our rules of procedure or anything, but I'm wondering if and I'll work with the clerk's department to maybe bring some kind of guidelines or amendment back, what their thinking might be, to see if there's a way that we could maybe streamline this. I'm not on the mailing list or the email list of certain council members who propose these amendments, so they're often new to me and often new to another couple members. I commend the chair for the procedure today for giving 5 minutes for everybody to get on speed. So I just want to raise that as a concern. I just think there's a way maybe to make the process work a wee bit better.
Thank you, Councillor Erb. Councillor Hunick.
Chair Redmond, if I may speak to that as well. There was a comment made earlier today toward my low vision and the inequality that presents. In effect, there are a few of us that have low vision around the table, and it's not just about the low vision. It's about time to process and make sure that the best decisions are made. So I would support Councillor Erb in having a deadline where appropriate to bring motions forward in advance so that we all process adequately.
Thank you, and I will institute and I hope my chairs of my committees will too, when something is dropped on our desk. When we took the 5-minute break, there were a lot of questions asked of Commissioner Sweeney, and so that one-on-one, of course, I would assume that anybody bringing forward a motion would have checked with staff. That's the only prudent thing to do to find out if there are unintended consequences. However, I saw many council members asking Peter questions of clarification of risk and what the unintended consequence might be of a motion. And that is just respectful of staff and council members to give us enough time to digest it. And I strongly believe that if any of us know about an incoming motion, we all should have the same information. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Also, I'll just remind all of us that we have fairly in-depth discussions on many issues, and often it spurs a change. And so not all motions are pre-contemplated, and I think we need to leave room for that because those discussions are important, and that's why we're here.
I'm going to go to Councillor Gowing, and then I'm going to ask if we can adjourn because we're losing people.
Thanks, Chair. I was actually going to echo what Councillor Sean says on the other side of it. With respect to my motion today, I do work full-time outside of this job, so it is kind of difficult in a way to prepare anything, and I wanted to make sure that staff got it, so that's why once I had this motion ready, it was sent to them. They looked it over. Sometimes it's just about timing. I have to put food on the table, and I work full time, so it's fitting it into my schedule as well. That works too.
So it has been moved and seconded to have unanimous consent to adjourn. Thank you all.